Planning Institute of the Paris region, the Île-de-France, especially on the rural areas of the region, although I also a little on the urban areas, and also many in projects, international projects of regional planning for my institute as a consultant. We work in Morocco, in Vietnam, in Uzbekistan, etc., and including on World Heritage sites. And as I told you when I was speaking of the Atlas, I'm very interested in having an overall view on the rural landscapes in the world. So that's why I am so interested in this project of Atlas.
Thank you, Pierre-Marie. I have failed very much, everybody, as a timekeeper because we are 1 minute to go. But if you are happy, we will continue. And we now move on to the North American members. Elizabeth, can you tell us very quickly what you're doing for the new members who don't know you?
Sure. So Elizabeth Brabeck, born, grew up in Canada, am faculty now at the University of Massachusetts in the United States. Very quickly, I've had over 30 years of working in cultural landscapes. My two big issues right now have to do, one with climate change and what that is going to do to the availability of both arable land and also buildable land. And one of the major issues, even without climate change, that we have to deal with is disenfranchisement from land, particularly for traditional and indigenous peoples, but not just those individuals. It's really about small landowners and family farms giving way to corporate farms. I'm also an attorney, so I think about this in terms of land conservation and resource conservation. My other issue, I was in a conversation with someone yesterday that brought it up again, is this idea of what is an ecosystem. And it, particularly in the United States, it is really run by people who are working in natural ecosystems, not human-based ecosystems. And there is so much biodiversity that is involved in human ecosystems, particularly people from Europe understand that much better than North Americans. And so it's this, it's going back to nature cultures and the extent to which this committee is linked with nature culture. Thank you.
Thank you. Brenda, you're next.
Hi.
Hello.
Can you hear? Oh, can you hear me? Great. You've already heard quite a bit about me earlier, but I am from the United States. I am the founder of the Living Landscape Observer website and newsletter, and I urge all of you to sign up if you're interested in following articles from the United States and all over the world on the intersection of nature, culture, and communities. And I've been publishing that for more than a decade now. I'm also particularly interested in the policy impacts on rural lands and agriculture. And finally, in my past life, I was the coordinator for the United States National Heritage Area Program and Pennsylvania's Conservation Landscape Program. So I'm really interested in how we can collaborate around large-scale landscape preservation and conservation that includes working landscapes at scale. And I want to echo Elizabeth Brabeck and Jane saying that I think there's a lot of good research, crossover research on biodiversity and climate resilience and sustainability for rural landscapes. And I think it's an area that needs more research and follow on. So thank you.
Thank you. Nora Mitchell. Nora.
Is this clear? Yes, I'm looking for the buttons. Thanks, Jane, very much. And I will also try to keep this short. Nora Mitchell. I live in the U.S. And in Vermont, the state of Vermont, which, as I was thinking about this, is a large working rural landscape with a couple of cities. It really is it's a state that really values its landscape. So it's nice to be in that environment. But I've worked, as many of you have, in areas that in landscapes where that wasn't such a an easy fit. And I worked for many years with the U.S. National Park Service and on landscapes, various types of landscapes. Many of them, rural landscapes, are in fact national parks in the national park system in the U.S. But I've became increasingly interested in rural landscapes and the whole idea that we've talked about today about it being heritage and unfortunately still not getting the recognition that is deserved. And I too found that interface with nature and culture as part of these working landscapes. It's probably one of the best examples of nature and culture and the synergistic quality. So I join with my colleagues that have already spoken to this, that this is an area that still needs work. And as Brenda mentioned, so I'm going to scale and involving local actors is really, there's some very good qualities of the ways that this work is being done that really deserve recognition and further investigation. So I look forward to, I heard so many things today. I'm so glad we did this because it's very exciting to hear the commonalities of shared interests. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Look
Nora.
forward to more.
Yeah, that's great. Jessica, welcome. Can you tell us about the other side?
Right, the other side. So yes, Jessica Brown, based in Newbury, Massachusetts in the northeastern United States, also very much surrounded by cultural landscapes where I live, but coming, I think, from the other side in the sense that I may be the only one here coming more from the nature conservation sector, background in biology and environmental studies, as well as in geography and international development, and many years, a couple decades of involvement with IUCN and its World Commission on Protected Areas. And I have, as Nora mentioned earlier, chaired WCPA's specialist group on protected landscapes. And in the IUCN universe, that framing is of protected areas, Category 5 protected areas that are shaped by the interaction of people and nature over time. So this very much encompasses rural landscapes, and our international network has over the decades been involved in joint research and publishing and in capacity building activities, all aimed at promoting that approach to conservation. In my day job, I am executive director of a small foundation called the New England Biolabs Foundation, and our mission is to support community-led stewardship of the landscape and seascape. So again, we are working in rural landscapes in really diverse regions in West Africa, Central America, and Andean South America. And recently, I have become involved with something called the Agroecology Fund, which is a collaborative of donors concerned with this kind of approach to regenerative agriculture, which was certainly mentioned earlier. And again, I think there's a network there that I'd love to somehow connect to this work. And I'm particularly mindful and concerned about the lack of African representation. And so we can kind of brainstorm a little bit about some people who would be good candidates there. Finally, just also some long history of work with the United Nations Development Program and its Compact initiative in promoting, again, community-led stewardship and landscapes in and out of World Heritage sites. And so some of the interests that I have been kind of pursuing over the years that I think are relevant to this working group, and like many here, strong interest in the linkages between nature and culture generally, but particularly how traditional practices, cultural practices, contribute to biodiversity and resilience in the landscape and seascape. And honestly, landscapes are not binary. They're not either cultural or natural. They really are on a continuum, as we all know. And I think that is, something that a lot of people on both sides, on the nature conservation side and the cultural heritage sector, are still discovering. I'm, as I mentioned, interested in traditional agricultural heritage landscapes, engagement of indigenous and local communities in conservation, and in sacred natural sites and the spiritual and sacred associations of the landscape. And the last thing I'll mention is I serve on the board of an organization called Terra Lingua, which has a couple of decades of work in mapping the connections between linguistic diversity, a really important element of cultural diversity, and biological diversity. And I think this question of language is one that we should also be delving into in our discussions of rural landscape, because there are many, there's really an extinction crisis, not only of biodiversity, but of linguistic diversity. Thank you. Looking forward to working together.
Thank you, Jessica. Michael Taylor, are you there?
I am here. Thank you very much. My name is Mike Taylor. I'm from New Mexico in the United States. I grew up along the borderlands. I'm recently retired from the National Park Service, where I worked as an archaeologist and worked in architectural conservation, but worked extensively as well with historic roads, cultural routes. And that's my special interest, is looking at the commonalities between cultural landscapes and cultural routes. I've worked quite a bit with the public lands in the western part of the United States, and with the issues associated with a lot of industries such as wind farm development, solar farms, oil and gas issues. And these areas are so tied up in a lot of friction right now in terms of how do we get the energy to our urban centers without destroying the wonderful rural landscapes, the wide open spaces that we have in the West. So with that, I'll leave it. I look forward to working with you all, and thank you very much for your time.
Thanks. Lovely to see you again.
Good to see you, Jane. Thank you.
Our next person is Ekaterina Vlahos. Are you there, Ekaterina? No, I know she is.
It's the same as Kat. That's my fault.
Oh, okay.
I'm not. It's showing up twice. Yeah.
Sorry.
No worries.
So we've already got. Okay, let's turn to Latin America and Walter Fernandez from Uruguay, who no doubt has lots of gum trees. Walter.
Hello.
Hello.
You can see me?
Yes, I can now.
Well, glad to see you, everyone, in every part of the world. I'm Walter Castelli. This is my first surname, and I'm from Uruguay. I'm an architect. I should say, trying to follow the suggestions of Andrea, should say I was born and raised in Uruguay. During my whole education years, I lived in Montevideo, the capital city, by the southern coast of the country. But becoming an architect, I moved to live in a small town of 17,000 inhabitants in the middle of the very important agricultural zone on the western area of the country. This town is called Yang, like in English, but strangely it's named here as Jung, as it was in some sort of French translation or way to say it. I refer this because it concerns certainly with my academical interest with rural landscapes as a architectural history teacher within the Republic University of Uruguay. My particular interest is a morphological approach about the methodologies and graphical tools to recognize the very different and specific shapes of rural landscapes. So to help describe and define categories within each one, and in the same way understand the difference among them. Until now, I've done it certainly only in Uruguay, but I would like to exchange with neighbor countries here in South America, and why not maybe in the future also the more distant one in other parts of the world. I really care about deepening this approach, especially to give new technical tools to a new designing attitude towards rural and agrarian territories, because they are essentially different than the urban ones and have a lack, I think they have a lack of public heritage recognition. Finally, thinking of the working in the way of working in the group, it really seems to me that there's a lot to add and work for concerning South American rural landscapes, specifically in the geographical area that includes my home country and also spreads to near areas in Argentina and south of Brazil. So I'm hopeful to add my view from this part of the world. And I'm really glad to join you for the first time.
Thank you very much. That's great. Now, I know Anna has left the meeting, so we will then move to Alicia. Alicia, I think you're there still. Alicia?
Yes. Yes.
Can you switch on?
Yes, but okay. Yes. Wait, please. Okay. Okay. My name is Alicia Leonor Canberent. I'm living now in Argentina. Well, my nationality is Argentine and Spanish. And right now I live in Argentina, as I told you before. I am an architect, an architectural conservator, a management consultant, and an expert in historical urban and architectural buildings of cultural heritage, and especially in cultural roots. I studied at the University of Buenos Aires, Argentina, and the Polytechnic University of Madrid in Spain. I'm actually Secretary General of International Scientific Committee on Cultural Roots, and an active member of several institutions related to the conservation of urban architectural and museum heritage, such as SICOP, ICOMOS, and different international scientific committees like SIG, this committee, CB, and historic roads, CV, and I work with the EPWG and LAC working groups. Okay, I have carried out extensive research of identification, description, analysis, and evaluation of projects in different cultural routes of Europe. For example, route of Roman Empire and the cattle transhumance trails of the Mesta and the Silk Route in China. Especially my publications are linked to cultural routes and analysis of problems related to their management and promotion, the recovery of their habitat conditions, alternative means, and adequate tools to achieve these objectives from different perspectives. My interest in cultural landscape is because I'm interested in different disciplinary approaches connecting and interrelating geographic goods and people, as well as categories associated with different components and attributes within a larger system in which the whole within the territorial system has more value than the separate parts. I think I can offer this committee my vision of systemic experience acquired through the identification of components and relationships of different cultural manifestations in the territory, and a personal interest in investigating what is behind the surface. Okay,
thank you
that's
very
more.
much. Thank you. That's very good. We look forward to that. Now, on my list, I have one more person, but Giovanni Gonzalez from Bolivia, but I don't think Giovanni is listening. But I also note there are two people who are present but haven't spoken. One is Carlo. Whether Carlo wants to say something? No? And the other person I called much earlier but didn't answer was Nishant from India. Nishant, are you present? Yes. Hello. You need to put your mic on. Microphone?
Nishan, maybe you can try removing your like headphone and just try directly.
No.
Oh,
Well, I think we will have to close.
oh.
Maybe Nishant can send Andrea an email. I'm sorry we have gone on much longer, but it has been a very rich meeting. It's wonderful to hear all the contributions from everybody. And Leela, you must say some concluding words because, well,
Yeah.
we've gone on.
So am I audible now?
Nishan?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay, sorry. So just
I suggest that you speak and without camera.
yeah. Is this okay now? Can you hear? Can you see the screen also, please?
Oh, yes. We don't have time for a presentation.
Okay, so I'll be quick in any case. So thank you. I'm sorry I joined a little bit late. So there are two projects I'm working on currently in India, and conservation of rural landscapes is a relatively very new approach and subject in India. And one is in the central India, which is basically royal gardens, which are produced gardens. So there's a continuation of landscapes in the royal gardens as well as the other agriculture, where as part of the garden conservation, we promote organic agriculture, and we are trying to promote the conservation of water and also the management of the water, because it's a drought-prone area. So the gardens often have these step wells and beautiful water conservation and management methods, which we are trying to promote. Also, we are looking at the built heritage aspects in traditional lime mortars and things like that. And apart from that, we are trying to revive the traditional practices to rejuvenate and the soil and bring back the whole idea of organic agriculture. Apart from that, we are involving the community in doing a kind of a seed bank where they share organic seeds and of different kinds, and they loan it, and then they return it back after successful produce. So there's a lot of stakeholders involvement, cultural rehabilitation, because the gardens often have temples and religious places also, and the ceremonies. So the harvest festivals, which are celebrated the music which is associated with the landscape. So we call the musicians when the training sessions are there to sing about the landscapes and the local folklores, and the food, the gastronomy, the local gastronomy. Other project which we involved in heavily is in Ladakh, and there's this. We were asked to do conservation of this monument, but we ended up looking at the whole landscape, where we documented the religious practices and festivals there, and we ended up marking all the fields which have particular names. So the agricultural fields had names and all rituals associated with it, which we are now making part of a group booklet for the local schools, and including that as part of their curriculum. And these are the two projects. Apart from that, I'm an architect. I got trained in conservation of monuments and sites in KU Leuven in Belgium at the Raymond Lemaire Center. And I'm really interested in it, also because my PhD subject, which is ongoing, deals with the rural landscape conservation and its impact on sustainable regional development. Apart from that, I'm working for UNESCO, New Delhi office and Dhaka office to help them implement historic urban landscape approach, and also to help the government of Bangladesh to draft national built heritage conservation policy. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Nishant. Over to you, Leonella.
Yes, okay. Thank you, Jane, first of all, for your strong...
not strong enough.
Not strong enough. Oh, okay. But and thank you all for your participation, for the presentation of yourself, and for the suggestions. I think that this working group on rural landscape is extremely rich on competencies and suggestions. Now we know each other more than with only the list of participants, and I ask all work projects are starting to work quickly, and I ask to be active in one or more work projects if possible. Thank you. We will meet soon at this moment. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
And I think Andrea has promised that we will get some minutes from this meeting, and what we can, we will send to everybody who has been participating tonight.
Yes.
Yes, I will prepare some short minutes. Also, most of them will be related, as you can imagine, about your short presentation. So I will take some information both from the survey and from the video that I'm recording of this meeting. And so maybe we can start from this also to create a sort of portfolio of our group.
I think that's very important. It was a great suggestion, Andrea, and I will keep you at it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
I'm sorry my sound went funny.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Ciao.
Goodbye.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye. Bye all.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Ciao, ciao. Adios. Adios.
Good evening or good lunch, good breakfast.
No, good night.
So on. For you, good night.
It's 11 p.m.
Yes.
And I am in my bed.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Jane.
We will speak, Leonella, when I come back from hospital. Steve's not there. Okay.